Hi guys, what's up and welcome to this week's video. So this week I went to go and see Rocketman, which is the new Elton John biopic. I must say before I do start this review, I guess you could say, I like Elton John's music. I think he's a very talented man. He's a very talented singer. He's a very talented musician and songwriter. But I don't really like the man himself. The reason for this is that I think he's quite egotistical and I think he's quite arrogant. But there is no doubt that Elton John is a very talented guy, and like I said, I do like his music. Hence why I went into Rocketman with a bit of a clear head. However, I wasn't overly impressed with the film as a whole, and there were certain bits that I just thought really could have been changed or could have been a lot more human-like, I guess you could say, and realistic. I think Rocketman went wrong in a few places, and here's why. First thing is that I went into the movie thinking that this was going to be very similar to Bohemian Rhapsody or The Dirt or Control or Sid and Nancy, whereby it's a normal biopic. I got that very much from the trailer. It was very similar, like Bohemian Rhapsody, very similar to that trailer. But I didn't expect it to be a musical. There was nothing saying from the poster or from the tagline that it was a musical. So obviously it was clear when his mum and his dad and his nan and John Reid and everyone started singing that this wasn't your normal biopic. Now, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love musicals. I adore them, you know, I love to go and see them. But this would have been better if it was a West End musical rather than a film, in my personal opinion. And because it was very musical based, I didn't know what was realistic, what was fake, what was a fantasy. It was very hard to follow the story due to it being a very musical kind of film, if that makes any sense. You know, in musicals anything's possible. You know, people stop, they dance and they sing, and this is very similar in this film, hence why I just had zero connection with it as well. The times shift and it was very hard to assume what era you were in. It felt like it just kept on stopping. Like, they would get to a really emotional scene, like his relationship with his father and his mother. They would get to a really emotional scene and you would feel that emotion and you would feel quite sorry for him. But then all of a sudden his dad or his mum or Elton would start singing, and because of that it just really lacked in character development, it lacked in terms of storyline. It just felt like you were watching a version of Mamma Mia 2, Here It Goes Again. It's just not the kind of thing you want in a biopic, because in order to have that connection and have that emotional connection, not only with Elton John, it's to do with the other characters as well, so it just really lacked that for me. It was understandable that he had a very lonely childhood. He was mistreated quite badly by his father, but I wanted more of that. I wanted that more realistic human side rather than talking and Elton John crying, and then suddenly he burst into song. And also because it was a musical, it was hard to guess the messages behind his songs. Like, for instance, in The Dirt, which is the Motley Crue biopic, or Nowhere Boy, which is the John Lennon biopic, or Bohemian Rhapsody, obviously, which is the Queen biopic, you got a sense of where these songs came from, what were the true stories behind these songs. Whereas this one, because it was like a musical once again, you didn't understand what was the message behind them, whether this thing happened and that thing happened and rah rah rah. It just really made you think, really? Really, Elton? Is this really how you're gonna do things? I think with certain biopics that have been released before in the past, it's quite clear that there are easier ways to show drugs and alcoholism. All you need to do is look at Sid and Nancy, which is obviously the biopic about Sid Vicious and his girlfriend. You could easily look at The Dirt as well. That has very strong drug abuse and alcoholism involved in that. Although, you know, obviously this is a different genre of music, they kind of went through the same sort of troubles that Elton John did, but they hit it on a more dark and realistic side. To display a serious message like that in a film, you don't want to do it in a musical. I think as well, I know that a lot of people will probably be saying, yeah, but it did show the hard-hitting relationship between his parents and that side of it. But if you watch a film like Nowhere Boy, which, you know, John Lennon had an extremely hard time with his relationship between his parents, and obviously lived with his aunt for a very, very long time. And that film nailed that theme, that actually these themes that they're talking about, even depression, the Ian Curtis biopic Control, they've spoken about very serious issues like alcoholism, drugs, loneliness, depression, bad childhoods. You know, they've explored all of that aspect of things, and they've done it in the best way that they possibly can. I don't think that any of the films that I've listed could have done it in any other way. They really have done a swell job with it, because it makes you think, okay, it was really rubbish for these people, but they got through it because they came to be these awesome people who we now know today, these amazing legends of music. Of course they had their troubles still down the line, of course things kept tragic for some of them, but it just, that was the way to do it, rather than just going through a musical whereby you just couldn't relate to anything like that. The scene with him and his dad, it was a really emotional scene whereby his dad got Elton John to sign an album and got it addressed to a friend from work. It was just a, you know, a lack of a father and son bond. I thought that scene was fantastic. And then suddenly they messed it up, and I just thought, what are you doing? You're making it good and then you're ruining it. Also, I know that a lot of people have also criticised that there's still loads of music legends out there, Whitney Houston, George Michael, George Harrison, and I know that they are in talks to do a Bowie biopic. So the fact that these guys have gone and have passed, and that their fans haven't got a biopic yet, but it's a bit like Elton John saying, okay, these people are doing biopics now, I'm worried I'm going to be forgotten, so I'm just going to jump in now and go, yoo-hoo, I wrote this song and I did this and I did that. It's a bit like he's trying to remind everyone that he's still around, and yes, he's retired, and yes, I know that he's not continuing his music career in order to be a family man. There's no denying that. But this was done by the guy who is quite egotistical and arrogant himself, and that was very evident in the film. There is that side of criticism to it for me that also lacked the whole interaction with the Elton John story as well. I think as well to mention is that the overall message of the film is to love yourself. That's the message that Elton John wants to put forward. And yes, it is vital as human beings that we do love ourselves, because if you love yourself, you look after yourself properly. It's done very much in the wrong way. After having the Queen, Motley Crue, John Lennon, Sid Vicious and Ian Curtis biopics, I think that was the right way to show relationships. Like I said, show serious sides to stories, but also to show people the trappings of fame. It was clear that Elton John, with his drug abuse, with his alcohol abuse, with everything that went on and his whole troubles of coming out, that is very real to him. And there's no denying that. In order for you to understand that properly and not think Elton John's just being very arrogant and egotistical, you have to do it in the right way. And he very much failed with doing that. In my own personal opinion, he failed with doing that in this film. By putting it through a musical, you lose that serious message that you have. It just looked like it came about in a very cheesy, over-exaggerated way. That's the word I'm looking for. Whereas the messages about other biopics that I'm seeing that have been a lot more realistic and have hit me hard and have made me go, you know what, that was a fantastic film. It's my reaction of Elton John still hasn't changed after watching it. I was hoping that after watching Rocketman I could go, no, you know what, I know the real side of Elton John. I know that he's this, this and this, and that he went through this and that, oh, this was the message behind this song, blah blah blah. But I still think he's quite an arrogant, egotistical man. You know, that's just my own point of view. I'm sorry if it offends anyone, but it's just a very lacking in connection film. At one point I did want to leave the cinema because it just just got absolutely ridiculous. There's no doubting that all of the actors who are involved are very talented, are also amazing singers as well. There's no denying that. Taron Egerton and Richard Madden, you know, all of them are in it and I love them, but I felt more emotional watching the John Lewis advert about Elton John than I did watching this film, I guess is the best way to put this forward. But I'd say definitely, yeah, if you were to turn it into a West End musical, it would be the show to go and see, definitely, without a shadow of a doubt. But it's not as a biopic whereby you're trying to get a message across. It just doesn't do it in the right way for me. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up and don't forget to click that subscribe button, and I shall see you in a video very soon. Bye!